thanks. So to start with, could you tell me history, brief overview of NIM Foundation, when it began, why, and what the main activities have been?
Sure. NIM Foundation was founded as a direct response to the violence and insurgency in the Northeast. We have several programs that revolve around preventing violent extremism, mostly at the community level, and providing mental health and psychosocial support to the survivors of the violent insurgency in the Northeast. Although a lot of our work began in the Northeast, we are also now present in the Northwest as well, responding to the banditry-related and resource-related conflicts in the Northwest, as well as the Middle Belt, in places like Benway, for instance.
Okay. What year was it that you...
It was established in 2016.
Okay. That was focusing on the Northeast?
Yes.
When did we start operating in the Northwest? And
only this year we expanded to the Northwest.
Okay. So the main implementation areas, you were saying social support,
and preventing violent extremism.
Okay.
Although these are very broad areas that branch out into other smaller sort of components.
So why hasn't he chosen to focus on these areas?
Well, these are broad areas that, as I said at the beginning, it was founded as a direct response to the violence insurgency in the Northeast. And these are really broad areas that have other sort of smaller components. For instance, there's an educational component, which is we have a learning center called ghfusvgs that was formed to respond to the educational needs of girls made vulnerable by the violent insurgency in the Northeast. We have other several programs, such as the rehabilitation and reintegration projects, which offers these services to children associated with armed groups. So we have children that are associated with Boko Haram, who were mostly coerced to join the groups or kidnapped. We also have children that are associated with the civilian JTF, formerly associated with civilian JTF, that we work to rehabilitate. We have programs that respond to gender-based violence. We have programs that go to hard-to-reach communities, rural communities in and around Maiduguri, to offer counseling services to survivors of the insurgency. Within this program, we also institute peace-building mechanisms in those communities that de-escalate and address grievances in communities before they escalate. So these grievances usually will be between different subsections of communities. So we have the elderly population against the youth, and males against females, Christians against Muslims, and so forth.
Okay. So in your own professional opinion, looking at the situation in Borno and the Northeast, and looking at the role, or at least potential role of government and any actor really, the big actors, governments, maybe the UN agencies, and considering the activities they have done there, is there any one thing when you think about Borno and the Northeast that you think, if you could pick one thing to prioritize the most to help the region as much as possible, whether education or any other activity, is there any one thing that you would pick and why?
That's a very difficult question. For me, it's not so difficult to choose what to focus on. I think I will focus on a lot of the root causes and not necessarily addressing the aftermath, so the consequences of things like lack of education, lack of job opportunities, and so forth. what one to focus on in particular will be somewhat difficult. But if I have to choose one, it will be addressing the economic inequalities. Yeah.
Okay. So does NEEM work with any international partners, international NGOs or UN agencies?
Yes, we do. We work with several international agencies across different programs.
It's kind of funny asking questions I know the answer to. So could you comment on the nature of your relationship with them? Like in terms of how it's come about and how you share the work you do with them, or whether they outsource projects to you, like, or anything.
Yes, certainly. So the nature of the work will depend on the core focus of the agency. For instance, we have worked with UNFPA in the past, who are at least in the Northeast, are principally concerned with the protection of the rights of women, so issues around gender-based violence and so forth. We worked with UNFPA last year on a gender-based violence project, basically offering mental health and psychosocial support to survivors of gender-based violence in Borno State, across 3 local governments in Borno State. We have a long-term partnership with UNICEF. As you must be aware, UNICEF are principally concerned with the rights of children and women. The projects that we implement on behalf of UNICEF across 4 local government areas in Borno State, Meduguri, Bu, Bama and Dambour, are principally concerned with rehabilitating and reintegrating children formerly associated with Boko Haram, children formerly associated with the Joint Civilian Task Force, as well as other vulnerable children in communities. We also have an existing relationship with Search for Common Ground and Action Against Hunger, where we provide mental health and psychosocial support to vulnerable members across several communities and local government areas in Borno State.
Okay. So how did these partnerships or relationships begin? Do they have like calls for proposals that you guys apply to, or you just
Yes, they are usually open bids that we bid for competitively.
I see. Okay. And looking at locally based, like community-based organizations in Borno, do you guys, I'm assuming you have a relationship with them, and could you describe that to me as well?
Yes, we do.
Community actors.
Yes. We have several relationships with community actors, community stakeholders. We find that they're they play very important roles in almost all the projects that we implement. Certainly, all the projects that we implement at the community level. For programs where we work directly in communities, we realize that the community stakeholders are gatekeepers, and if they don't buy into your project, it's likely to fail. For instance, if I can give some specific examples, in programs where we go to communities to attempt to institute peace mechanisms to address grievances at a local level. We go first on advocacy visits with the community stakeholders to explain our intentions, but also to hear from them as well. Given that these peace mechanisms are not new things in communities, they have been in existence across several communities that predates the existence of Nigeria as it is. They're very, very old.